Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases.
Hello, everyone. Glad you're here tonight. If you're new to the channel, we want to thank you for being here. And as you're in chat, be respectful of families, mods, and each other. And we'll have a brief presentation. During that presentation, if you have any questions about anything that I'm covering, throw them in the chat. Mrs. Steve here will make sure that they get brought up. And we'll try to answer everything we can at the end of the presentation. Tonight, of course, we're going to be talking about the recent prosecution's statement that they're going to be seeking the ultimate penalty against Kohberger, the DP as we'll refer to it tonight. And as the trial progresses, and there's a lot of things going on. We saw the defense come out with some statements last few days, and it's concerned a lot of people that and it should bring up the fact that this is exactly what our system is set up for, is that the trial system is that you're presumed innocent until guilty, and that as information comes out, you should always hesitate. And that's exactly what's happening. And that's absolutely something that is expected in the court system. And I've been sitting there and even as a witness for the state, and see as each side, the prosecutor and the defense, argues these cases. And I've had my heart stop a few times as they slug it out in the courtroom. And you hear some of the opinions of the judge and how they're going to let the trial proceed. And during not only the trial itself, but even these pre-trial hearings, because there's a lot of different types of hearings that's going to come up. And as we see the defense start throwing out some of this stuff that's later on the back part of this presentation tonight, you'll see that they're prepping and they're about to have some hearings and to see what is relevant for the jury to hear, and who's going to be testifying, who these experts are, who these officers are, and how all the evidence came to be. And even, we have the issue about the grand jury that the defense is bringing in. So it's everything that should be happening as justice is being presented, and that's what we need to do. With that being said, we'll get started. All right. Of course, if you have any information regarding this case of the homicides of Madison, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana, absolutely make sure law enforcement has it for the fact that they're going to need all the information for justice to prevail in this case. And so if you have that, make sure that you contact them and provide it. Of course, this here is Brian Kohberger, and this is if you look at a lot of different cases, you're going to see whenever you see the defendant come into a courtroom, in some states, it works a little bit different. Some of them that early on, that some of the pre-trial or pre-jury hearings, you'll not see them dressed up or presented in any type of well-dressed, almost attorney in suits and things, in the presence of attorneys. There's a lot of times that they're just whatever their jail attire is how they're in there, as we've seen with what happens with the Delphi and Richard Allen. But with Kohberger, they're going to absolutely present him in this manner, or they have so far. And I expect that will continue all the way up to and during jury selection and after. Absolutely, it will happen during jury selection and thereafter until whatever sentence is put out. But of course, he was indicted on by a grand jury last month, and his trial is set for October 2nd. Do I see October 2nd being a realistic date that it's going to get started? No. I would probably be surprised if it's October 2nd of 2024. I really don't know. I expect somewhere by next summer, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it's, all the way in late fall of 2024, because all the data and all the information that's been collected in this case, and we're talking about multiple jurisdictions just on the investigation part of it, because we've got 2 states involved. And then with the arrest of Kohberger, it brings in a 3rd state. And so it's scattered from west to east across the United States. And there's a lot of jurisdictions that were involved and a lot of different agencies. It's just not the FBI, and it's just not the university police and Moscow police and anyone else that you think of the local PD that's involved in this. And there's just so much information on it. And so, and as you can see, what the defense, like I said, when we get on into the show, some of these stalling, I don't know if stalling is the proper word, but they want certain things done to slow down, and so that they can look at and make sure that they covering all their bases, which is part of what defenses do and what prosecution does. But it's very interesting, some of the of requests made by the defense, actually in just today. But the prosecutors made their intentions known about a month after a judge entered a plea of not guilty on Kohberger's behalf, because he just stood there on the 4 counts of the 1st-degree homicides and the 1 count of burglary. And then the state law mandates that the prosecutors typically have 60 days to formally notify a defendant if they plan to seek the DP. And so with this in mind, this has come out recently, or last day or two, that the state has said, consequently, considering all the evidence currently known to the state is compelled to file this notice of intent to seek the DP, the document said. So there's no ifs, ands, or questions about it now. So everybody's on board. I don't know. I haven't seen where the families have stepped up and made any interviews. I'm sure they're out there, but we already knew that a couple of the families were, leaning this way. Not leaning, they were full support of it. And whatever the families want, I will never second guess what the families want. And so we always, from my world, that's where I stand. I stand with what the victims' families want done. Then you have that that if this ultimate penalty is found to be by the jury that they sentence Kohberger to, then of course the Idaho state officials can have 1 or 2 options available to them, either lethal injection or a firing squad. And so which one will they do? We don't know. That bridge is a long ways off. That has to be crossed, and we don't have a conviction. But this is things that he will be looking at. It's not that they're going to happen, but these things are put in his mind by the state proclaiming this, because the defense attorneys are going to say, okay, this is what we're facing. And as we proceed forward, these are the 2 outcomes that if that sentence is here. And so it's a way of notifying and possibly bringing up some negotiations. They're, putting that plea deal on the table by keeping the DP on the table is a powerful tool that is used by prosecution. Now, if there were certain negotiations reached, would the families allow that and the prosecutor, or would they say, no, there's no deals that's going to go from this point on? I would think that is, just from what I've seen over the years, it is often thrown up by the state to apply those pressures, and so that the defendants recognize that, yes, there's only one option here for you. We feel extremely strong about our case. And this statement here, because when you're looking for the DP, it ain't that you have very low evidence. You better have a lot of evidence, because it's more than just you stepping up to the plate and saying, oh, we've got enough, and what that evidence would be. If you just go by what the defense said last week, of course, it's no, y'all don't have anything. But the words used were that none of the crime scene victims' DNA was in or on any of Kohberger's property. Didn't say if any of Kohberger's DNA was in the victim's property. And we already know that some is, and especially that knife sheath. And if he is the one that committed these crimes, I expect that there's a lot more DNA somewhere in that residence. Have they found it? I don't know. Will they find it at some point if it's there? And it's just a matter of time. Now, I know they have these other DNA profiles of other individuals, some known, some unknown, I would expect. I know that right now they may not be known right now, but they will be known without a doubt. Before we sentence anyone, I expect that, or it would ever be executed out, that they would make sure that those through the genealogy profiles, and they're going to find out everyone that was DNA profile in there at some point. Do they have it now? I don't know. Is that what some of the things they're filing on? I don't know, but I expect that they're going to be able to identify every one of those DNA profiles, and I believe it's necessary. I'm with the defense on that. That yes, we need to know all with the technologies that we have now. We should be able to find all those identities of, and there shouldn't be an unknown DNA profile. And I just think that's sound or something that should be done for the fact that, if there's anyone else involved, this is one way to figure it out. All right. Then, of course, with Brian's Kohberger's DNA, there's no ifs, ands, or buts that his DNA is at a critical part of the crime scene that's on that knife sheath. The knife sheath is laying under one of the victims who sustained injuries from a knife that would, as I believe the prosecution will bring in, that the injuries would correspond with a knife that would be coming from that type of weapon that that sheath would accommodate. And this is huge. It's critical. And I don't know how the defense will ever be able to simply explain that knife sheath away. I'm sure that they've had some ideas, and as the defense always, they come up with things, and we've seen that in the Casey Anthony case, that out of nowhere, a defense attorney came up with a statement of what happened that came out of somewhere that no one ever even thought about. Is that something that might occur with this? Absolutely. And sometimes it will feel like a gut punch that you never thought of it, and you never expected that the defense would come with such a claim. And we have to be ready for that. And if they can prove that claim, then of course it's one thing. And they don't always have to prove it, that much. They just got to get it in there to the mind of one juror. And if one juror agrees with it, then of course there's a possibility of a hung jury, and we have to weigh that and see what's going to happen on that. So I don't know how many of you have ever been in court or been on a jury, but you know how the prosecution and the defense, they bicker back and forth, and the judge up there referees it out, and you'll have your moments of questioning what's true, and whoever has the best case, best presentation, that's who's going to win this thing, and it will be true with this also. But in Idaho, whenever the prosecution seeks DP, it has to be unanimous by the jury. And then after guilt or innocence is, or guilt is found, innocent, of course, it's done. But if guilt is found, then of course we have to go into the penalty phase of the trial. And then there can be a hung jury at that point, and it just transfers down to being a life sentence. And but then if it gets to the DP, it's lethal injection unless the state cannot obtain the drugs, in which case firing squad. And of course, Kohberger would know this, and he is going to be able to see this until whatever his attorneys work out, if they work on a plea or if they win the case. That's the only way that he will not be facing this stuff. But on the capital crimes for Idaho, there's certain things, and there's far more of it, but these were just some of the things that are related to exactly what happened at the residence and when the homicides occurred. He, of course, number one, he's never been convicted of a different homicide. But that we do have multiple homicides. So number two is absolutely comes into play as far as what the prosecution and brought them to be able to ask for and go for the DP. And that he is, number three, same. He knowingly created a great risk of death to many persons, which we know we have 4. It's heinous, atrocious, cruel, and all of that fits. And absolutely number 5, he displayed utter disregard for human life. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And because he didn't stop at number 1. He didn't stop at the second victim. He didn't stop at the third. He stopped at the 4th that we're aware of. Are there other victims out there? It's possible from previous crimes, and we just don't know about them. But right now, that wouldn't even be related to this case, because this case is going to stand alone on what happened on this night in particular. And then, of course, number 6, that it happened during a multiple choice of things. And, of course, he's charged with a burglary. And then let's see, has exhibited in number 7, also where he has exhibited a propensity to commit homicide and constitutes a continuing threat to society. So of all of these, there's only one of the top 7 things to fit the capital crimes in Idaho. He knocks it out of the park if he is the one responsible for this case, for these homicides. But the plea negotiations, that's what I'm saying. When you bring this to the table and you start applying this, and he's facing this ultimate penalty, then this is what is a driving force. And it doesn't really matter if he wants to plea or not. It still takes both sides of the table coming to an agreement, and then it has to be accepted by the court. So there's a lot of things that are against that. It's not easy to come to a plea deal, but will they? Hopefully, if that's what part of the family's plan is, and they would take a plea deal, then I'm on their side. Doesn't bother me what ultimately happens there. But a lot of times they don't wish to have that to even face the risk of the DP. And now the defense has requested certain things, which I found extremely interesting. And a lot of this, to me, they say now that the DP is on the table, it's more relevant, and it has to be absolutely something that they are trying to acquire even more information. And some of it sounds almost like a fishing expedition of where can we find some type of corruption, because they hinted at that there was some type of conspiracy or possibility of conspiracy of all the officers that were involved, that certain individuals, when they said it, because they did not want Kohberger just to accept the fact that everyone that was working on the case and had control of DNA and other things, they were implying that there could be some type of staging or planning of evidence. And do I believe that's the case? Absolutely not. But the defense request is that that they get some information about the scientists who carried out the DNA testing and what led them or the authorities to suspect him in the first place. So they want to know about that tip, and they want to know how and what was the thing that more than Kohberger just having access to the properties or driving by or owning a vehicle similar as a description, because they started, looking at Kohberger at a certain point. And of course, it's going to be argued that, and that he was targeted for the fact that in Indiana, he was stopped twice. And will the defense let it slide that, they weren't already tracking him and telling him and all this? I think they're going to bring up those points that even before, because we know that when he arrived, his residence was put under surveillance, and certain DNA links were made. And then, of course, once that occurred, then the arrest warrant affidavit came, and they arrested him in Pennsylvania. But and when he arrived in Pennsylvania, so they suspected him, and the defense wants to know exactly when were and what was the first time that he came to the being targeted by law enforcement as a prime suspect. And I believe they had other suspects also, but at what point did he become really prime? And of course, once the DNA comes in, it's not even a question then. But some of the other defense requests is the training records of 3 police officers who interviewed critical witnesses. And what can this lead to? And of course, the state is going to say that this has nothing to do with this. You're going to try to set something that is very unfavorable in the future presidents, that if you allow certain things to occur, of whereas you just go in and start fishing for, is there an officer that, once you're a certified officer, you're required to have a certain amount of training. And if you're doing certain jobs, you're supposed to have certain types of training. And is it a fishing expedition that they're trying to say that some of these statements and some of the training and some of the points that these officers brought up, that they led these witnesses to certain conclusions or certain statements and assisted? I don't know where they're going, but I agree with the state that you can drag this out, because right now they want these 3 police officers. But what happens when these 3 police officers may or may not fulfill the bill that they're trying to, whatever they're fishing for? If they have a claim against a police officer, they need to make sure that claim is brought up and, put it in here. And so that the public and everyone can see, for the fact that if there is something going on and there's a bad police officer out there doing something unethical, we absolutely need to know it, because that's not the way that the judicial system should work. And but they focus on these three officers and why. There was some rumor, or it wasn't rumor, but there was a certain type of hearing that came out recently of where the state had to release certain information about advising of a certain action of some of a police officer. Is this going to be linked to that? Probably so. I don't know what that link is, but it seems to be falling into some type of pattern. And then the defense, and of course, they're going after the FBI team leading the criminal probe for the fact that the FBI and the lab work and some of the things and that were, that they're trying to find, and especially about the genealogy IgG that was done, and that there's certain labs that haven't, and certain personnel that haven't been identified, and there's going to be a most of this should have already been presented to the defense, and I don't understand why it's not, but it is interesting that they're having to go in and specifically request some of this. And the background of the tip that led to the search for Mr. Kohberger's white Hyundai. From the probable cause affidavit, it seems pretty clear that they were just looking at it from law enforcement perspective, and it was called into the Washington State University, and they checked their records and they sent. But was there other tips? And from this statement, that it doesn't appear that they're addressing what was in the PCA. They're addressing that there's possibility of some type of other tip, because if you take the PCA for what it says, it's very simple. The police officers checked the records of who had vehicles on campus, found it, went and checked it, and there he was. And he's, matched through the law enforcement's background and bushy eyebrows and description, and being in the area, being stopped in Idaho also. And so we know he's been in that part of the state. And of course, I have no idea why they're requesting the cell phone records cited in the probable cause after. You would think that this doesn't even have to be requested. Why isn't it already part of discovery? And this is, like I said, this makes no sense to me of why they're having to request this, or is this just something that they're, haven't quite covered yet, or there's more, data, but it makes no sense, because you would expect that every bit of the cell phone records that's cited in the probable causes, you would expect would be part of discovery. And if not, this makes no sense to me. And I'm at a total loss for that. But, and then we have the third and final motion that will be presented tonight. And this is where the defense is about the stay of proceedings, that the defense is arguing that the case should be put on hold until the matter of the grand jury record is resolved in court. And like I said earlier, this is probably one of the most striking and stunning part of it, of delay that they're trying to do. How long will it take to get the grand jury record and get all this resolved? Is it something that can be done in a day, or is it something that will be done in 6 months? I have no idea. But this is, they're going to attack every step of the way, the defense is, and that's their job. And if the state didn't follow the rules, they're about to get a lesson in the rules. But this is where it's heading to, and that's how come I don't know if we'll have a clear finding by 2024. I don't see it any way, shape, or form getting to the trial stage this year. I hope I'm wrong. Won't be the first time I'm wrong, but I'm hoping I'm wrong. But I think it'd be sometime 2024 before we get to the actual trial. Well, with that being said, we got any questions?
Mm-hmm. Okay, you got a few.
All
And Jennifer Rochelle is starting her vacation with a 12-hour drive leaving tonight at midnight.
Excellent.
So throw some good vibes, say a prayer, whatever it is you do. She's going to need them driving all night.
You sound like me. When I get on the road, I travel for.
He does.
I don't stop
Except
unless
for
Mrs. accepts.
And we're not going to go into why. Okay. So let's see here. We're going to start with Deb Tutterow. Mr. Steve, has the two surviving roommates talked to family members?
I would expect they have, or there had been some type of contact now. But I would expect that, someone has spoken or there's been some type of liaisons. I have no, I'd be speculating, telling you that they had absolutely sat down and disclosed all the information. I have no idea. But you would think that early on and through the supporting and that would go on because they are roommates. And but that's just what I would expect. Doesn't mean it happened.
Right.
Now, members, absolutely. To the other, the victim's family members is the ones I don't know if they have or not.
Okay, and from Josh, the Posh. How does the state approach cases with multiple victim families who may have varying desires concerning seeking DP?
Well, that's, and, because we are looking at 4 families, you're looking at the possibilities of grandparents, parents, siblings, and of each family. And so you have a large number of people that could possibly be involved in these decisions. And they're all absolutely have to be weighed for me. But, ultimately, regardless of what the family wanted, the final part of it and the final decision has to be made by that prosecuting attorney. Because regardless if the family, they have to go by what the state law says that they're able to impose. And so even if the families didn't want it, or if it's 50-50, or if the family says absolutely, and the prosecution says, no, I don't want it, it lays total decision is going to be in that prosecutor's hands. And I always hope that the families are on board with that decision. That's just my personal opinion. Carries no weight whatsoever. I just like to see that the prosecutors follow along with what the family wants. And have they with this case? I don't know what the total number of people that the prosecutor spoke to in trying to determine how many or how far outside the family he went as far as siblings, grandparents, or if it's just totally parents. But we'll probably find that out at some point.
As I make noises. All right. And from Olivia at Steve, isn't the DNA on the knife sheath only on the inside of the snap?
That's what has been proposed. I mean, we'll find out exactly in the trial. It'll be demonstrated where they made the collection from. And but that's only on this. We don't know. There could be other DNA of Kohberger's in that residence that has been discovered or may not have been discovered at this time. There's a lot of lab work to be done. I can't believe that everything has been processed to the degree that science can, even at this time. What are we now? We're probably 2 plus, we're 8-9 months into this thing. And I don't, and we're talking about, there's a lot of evidence out there, and we're talking about 4 victims and multiple floors of crime scenes. You got the top and then the second floor and multiple rooms. I mean, there's a lot of potential for evidence to be there.
And from Deb, DNA in car or apartment?
Well, none from the victims. Now, of course, there's going to be DNA, but there's none from the crime scene or the victims in the car or apartment. But now, Kohberger's DNA. Now, if they say they didn't find even Kohberger's DNA, then we may have issues there. Because, and that would be a good point, that if there wasn't, but that, that's not even a possibility, because we've got videos of Kohberger driving his vehicle with his father. And so I'm sure they found DNA profiles of his father and him in the vehicle. But now, once he gets home and they process the car in Pennsylvania, if they didn't find any DNA, that would be an extremely interesting fact.
You think?
It would.
All right. And what? Okay. And before I do this next one, we're going to do us a blue light for Dandy Lioness 2 months membership.
Thank you. Appreciate your support.
So we appreciate that. All right. And from Josh, Steve, can the jury in Idaho come back with a unanimous guilty verdict, but not unanimous in DP?
They said, yes, they can come back unanimous guilty and then get to the penalty phase. And if it's not unanimous if they're asking for the DP, then it goes to a life sentence. And, but yes, that it doesn't have to be unanimous in the DP section. But if it's not unanimous with the DP, then it's to life. From what research and what little clip I made.
But no parole.
I don't know.
Oh my goodness!
I don't know what happens with that.
Yowza. Okay, I think there's a word missing here, but
Okay.
From Deb, Mr. Steve, will surveillance video of BK with gloves on in his neighbor's trash can?
If they have it, we'll see it. I expect that you will see that, and but we're coming out of what has happened for the last 3 years of masks and gloves, and there are certain people out there that have certain phobias, and is that easily something that he could say? Absolutely, because some of his eating, he already has a history of making certain issues about food and things. So it's not far reaching that the defense will be able to explain gloves and mask away quite readily.
Oh, you waiting on me?
Mm-hmm.
Odd.
Oh, no.
No, you're used to that, right?
Mm. No. You're always on time.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay. And from Junior, why not just give them what they want?
Some of it, and I absolutely agree. If it has anything to do with any of the evidence, absolutely. But when you start trying to go in and your fishing expeditions of if you have evidence that someone in law enforcement is doing something wrong, absolutely bring that to the court's attention. But going in there and just start looking for training records and things, that's not, something that, that's just taking up time that means nothing, because the officers are mandated to be law enforcement officers in the state. Now, if they're saying that they're not qualified, then make that statement. These officers are not qualified to do the job that they're doing, and this is why. And then have a hearing. But just that we want all of this just to see, I don't agree with that. But we'll see where it goes and when we get a clearer understanding of it.
Okay. And from Josh, Steve, can you explain duty to have candor to the court? What does that mean? And could the defense be misstating, overstating their argument as a strategy? Oh, that's a good question. That's a good one, Josh.
Yeah. And yes. Both sides are going to overstate. Both sides have to have that they're respectful of the court and that they wish to make sure that justice is part of what this trial will go, and that there's nothing being done under the table that is violating any of Kohberger's rights of discovery. And if there is, then absolutely it should be stopped for the fact that we do not want to justify or put in jeopardy this trial and justice. There's nothing that the prosecution should be doing that is putting this case in jeopardy. And I don't believe that is the case. But always the defense, and we see it in a lot of different trials, that they are the defense will often be a little bit overstating their arguments. And both sides have strategies. It's not a simple, you would think it would be simple, but it's not.
Okay, and from Jeff, what bothers me is there was someone in the investigation that broke the gag order. Would they do other things to cause issues for the prosecution?
And that is a good point. Hopefully that anything and everything, like I said, anyone that jeopardizes this trial and justice, hopefully the court will, whatever the court finds, and if they put certain sanctions upon either, and it can be sanctions upon any court officer, attorney, law enforcement officer, anyone that's sealed up under this gag order, absolutely they should be sanctioned, and whatever the court decides. I've seen officers put under I was talking to a friend of mine that was an investigator one time. We was in the courthouse, and I said, "You want to go get a bite to eat at lunch?" And he said, "I can." He said, "I'm under house arrest." He had upset one of the judges, and the judge locked him in the courthouse. So judges have, they have a lot of power, especially in that courthouse. And but I left him and went and had lunch.
Waffle House?
No.
No Waffle House.
Not that day. It was the middle of the day.
Okay. All right. And from Dave, Steve, do you think BK might have been wearing booties? And if he was wearing booties, would the shoe impression hold up?
We're about to test that again. We tested without booties, and I have done testing with. There is a point that if there is a tear in them, that could happen. Yes, I've got, I just ordered, I found out I was out of luminol.
Of course.
And
it's all in my car.
Yeah. And so I've got some luminol coming in. We're about to do a bunch of testing to try to find out and see what the time frames of what possibly could have happened, or even if it's even possible for someone to be able to remove in a narrow time frame what he did, if he is the one that's guilty of this. But I'll be checking that booties on that transfer.
All right. And from Kamala, question: under the Brady rule, they have to give all, quote, relevant evidence, end quote, not just anything the defense wants, right?
And that was the Brady rule, was one of the things that came up about one of the officers recently of what was that. And I don't know what that final question was about, who violated or what was a violation or what was the findings of that Brady rule that came into question. And And yes, you would think that anything relevant that they would and they should, if it's relevant to the case, you know, I don't even see how it can't be. But I'm with you that the defense has a right to that if it's relevant to the case. And I can't see a judge saying that, oh, yeah, that's relevant, but you're not going to see it. Makes no sense. And generally, when it doesn't make sense, it's not something that will happen in a court.
Did you bring the guy back some food at lunch?
Oh, didn't think of that.
So that's enough.
We laughed about that for I guess for the next 3 months. Every time I saw him, I said, whenever I was going out to lunch, and I'd run by his office and I say, "Are you under house arrest, or you want to go get a bite to eat today?"
This is hard. And from Lena, can a random person like me buy luminol?
There's a certain process, but yes, there are certain things you have to fill out. And if you,
Like why you want it?
yeah, why you want it, and you're not going to export it, and other questionnaires, if you contact them, a lot of PIs, private investigators, and other people, and people that teach and train, they have access to it. I have access to it, so, and I'm a random person.
Yeah. Not so random. All right. And
Oh, Mike, David Spirit, 5 hours. Curious if the sheath belt loop is torn. My opinion is this leather is low quality. If that's the case, it was most likely torn off. Thought that is possible, and some of those cheap sheaths are easily broken, or they have a snap that breaks. If they're not sewn, I don't know what the happened on this. I did find it interesting that in the defense's statements the other day, when they were talking about the sheath, they said it was placed. And I don't know if that was done with a reason. They didn't use any words other, they could have said found. They didn't say it was dropped. They said it was placed, which I found that term interesting. Whereas if you saw that the sheath was torn, you would think that they might say it was lost during the struggle and was damaged and lost during the struggle. But they said it was placed. But that's just my over-reading of that one word because I really don't know what it means, but I do find it interesting.
I don't see nothing. It keeps going off.
I got alarms going off at the neighbors.
It is always something. All right. So thank you so much, Mike D.
Yes, appreciate your support, sir. Thank you.
All right. And from Jeff, Steve, I read that hydrogen peroxide can remove blood stains and breaks down blood cells, etc. Hospitals use it all the time for cleaning purposes. Could this be a cause or used by BK to remove DNA?
There's a lot of chemicals out there that are, degrade DNA, and it's just not hydrogen peroxide. But the point is that there's certain areas that you wouldn't normally, because there's so much potential and so many items that he would have been in contact in a crime scene if he was committing crimes, that he would literally almost be covered with several different types of blood stains and transfers and blood spatter, impacts, low velocity, mid velocity, cast off. There's so many things that can occur, and you'll be able to see these in just a few weeks when Mrs. Steve and I reenact some of this.
Goody.
Oh, goody. But then the potential for the transfers into his vehicle. I'm not really surprised that there was no or anything discovered in his apartment and other places. I am surprised about the vehicle. Now, that doesn't mean that they won't find something at some point. but they haven't found it yet. That if you go by what the defense, is true, but yes, he could have. There's possibly that the reason that nothing was found, that he was able to clean everything, but with that seat belt, steering wheels, dash, controls, radio, there's so many different things, and once it's there, that even if the DNA profile is destroyed, and that there would be other potential of the signature from luminol that would react with the iron in the blood and show and give a signature. And they didn't mention that, so there could be that possibility that the DNA is gone, but the characteristics of a positive luminol reaction that could be there. So we'll see where that goes. That's a good question, and that DNA may not be there, but the characteristics of a positive reaction could be.
All right. For Miss
Well,
Kamala.
no, Mr. Steve, you're not random for for your trips. Godspeed.
I have to agree, Kamala. Thank you so much. All right.
That's funny right there.
That is fun. All right. And we got Gail.
Gail became a YouTube member. Thank you. Appreciate everybody's support.
We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. And from Dave, you are not a random person. You are Mr. Steve. So there you go. All right. And from WL22, can we get whoever's dressing BK to dress RA for court hearings? What a drastic difference in wardrobe. I tend to agree.
Now, it may be part of the court system in Indiana versus Idaho. And so.
Well, they need to do some tweaking.
Yeah. But now when he gets to if he does take it to a jury trial, he won't look like what you're seeing currently. Guaranteed.
All right. And let's see here. I gotta know. I love that name. Absolutely love the calm, common sense you both bring to true crime. Is the trunk considered inside the car?
It is in my book. And that's something else that part of my testing that we're going to be covering, because if that vehicle, and like I said, it's shocked the devil out of me that there wasn't something in there. And how can you do that? And I'm going to try to find out.
Okay. And from Mitzi, Mr. Steve, have you ever considered he disrobed from his Tyvek suit and bagged it up, perhaps tossing out the window to grab when he exits? He would be clean.
Well, and in certain manner, it depends. Like I said, we're talking about how good is that Tyvek, what surfaces you have, and what does your hands touch. And then when you, even when you take your gloves off, there's a potential of cross-contamination. And that cross-contamination, and I'm going to do a lot of experiments, and we're going to see how that cross-contamination can come, that if you are disrobing, you still have these gloves on. And when you take the gloves off, that if there's any type of blood transfers on that, as you touch your other clothing and then seat belts, that you can have first, second, third generation transfers. And so I just have to see what those look like. And because it is extremely troublesome for the prosecution of how he would be able to accomplish that. I'm with the defense on that. There is a great question, and it's more than just saying throw a plastic bag in the car, because he's on the way there, he goes off the grid on the way to the or when his phone is no longer showing that he's left his residence, his phone goes off. how long did he prep at that point? What did he prep, and what measures did he take? And then when he left, phone was still off. If we go by what the timeline of the vehicle being seen, and then when his phone came back on, what measures and what was possibilities that occurred during those times that he's off the grid, that no one knows where he's at. But when he does pop back on, and, you know, it's not a long time, but what can occur in those moments? Because even during those moments, we're still talking about a timeline of, it was weeks before his vehicle was seized. So, and his clothing and apartment searched.
And Josh, didn't the PCA indicate that the sheath was found partially covered by one of the victims?
Yes, absolutely. And that is extremely interesting. And like you said, was it due to the fact it lost during the struggle, or was it dropped, or was it placed? I don't know. And was it damaged, such as the belt loop broke? Possible.
And from Josh, could BK have used some counter forensics? In other words, a cover for the driver's seat and floorboard, and then remove them afterwards?
Absolutely. And that, and all that, any barriers and things can occur and would, but there's still certain things that you would expect from that seatbelt if he wore a seatbelt. And, you know, did he pre-plan this out and take great measures? I'm on deck a vehicle out, Mrs. Steve.
What?
And we're going to see. I'll use one of the older vehicles.
You think?
Yeah. And, but I'm gonna see what it takes to do that, because I've got plenty of synthetic blood over there, and we're going to find out exactly what it takes to dress a vehicle out to not allow this cross contamination.
Wow. All right. And unearthed secrets, Marty. Crazy question here, but whatever. Just a curious question. What if this all goes south and somehow he goes free? What's the next step for prosecutors? What would BK do next?
There's no other steps for it. He's found innocent. You would have to have the federal government come in with some type of civil rights violation or something, as we saw in other cases sometimes that occur. But until that, the local prosecutors, this is their one shot at it.
Yep.
From my understanding.
Okay. And I got to know, if indeed he stole his sister's phone, age 19, was mandatory rehab why he has no record?
I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes you have, there's certain things, first offender status, and if you go so long, then they swipe everything. I don't know how it is in Pennsylvania, but some of the first offenders, if you do everything you say you're going to do from that moment, then you can have your record expunged. And is that what occurred on that? I don't know. But I've seen people get their records expunged.
All right. And let's see here. Frank Meister just showed.
Hello, Frank. Good to see you.
All right. Let's see here. And I'm just cruising here. And Josh, you are absolutely correct. I can only imagine being one of Steve's neighbors, seeing him out there decking a car with synthetic blood. Yeah.
Yeah. Mrs. Steve appreciates all my efforts.
Oh, I do. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Let's see here. And I don't see any more questions. I'm doing home. Yep. I don't see any more questions for you.
All right, guys. We appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate everyone's support. It means a lot to us. But we've got, like I said, we got a bunch of stuff that we're about to, I don't know how long it's going to be for the equipment comes in and the aluminol, because that's one big thing I can do. Some of the other testing I can do, and then come back in whenever I process the with the chemicals. So so just bear with us until we can get everything here. And Mrs. Steve's participation in it, I'm looking forward to, because it is interesting that what occurs at a crime scene is that we have 4 victims, and there was violent encounters between the offender and each of the victims. Did some of the victims able to respond and fight back? I believe that would be the case, and I think it's been put out there that it did occur. And even through that one interaction of someone putting up a fight, there will be transfers, and we'll demonstrate that. And
Hold on. Whoop, wrong one.
I gotta know. $2. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So we appreciate it.
But and we thank you for your support. It means a lot to us. Every bit of it does. But we're going to look at that and see what we can find out, because, like I said, this is probably the most troubling part of the case for the prosecution, of how he was able to go to that vehicle, and even if he had months to clean it up, that would surprise me that he would be able to. So we'll look into it, and y'all stay safe out there.
Okay, hold on. I got 2 things for you. Kamala, move your head. She can't see your blue light. This is for you. She missed her blue light because she had to disconnect her generator. So there you go. And then we have a little something extra. I've started a blog.
Oh, yes.
Lethal Evidence. You can actually get to it from the website. Take a gander at it. We've got another post tomorrow coming up. It's going to be quite interesting to see what he's been doing. So take a look at it if you get a chance. We'd appreciate it. Oh, wait. Another question popped in here. Hold on. From Eileen. Could he have put on protective clothing, gloves, shoe covers on after crime before entering car?
That's going to be part of some of the things that we're going to do. We're going to check all that out. I've got a bunch of stuff ordered, and we're going to see where it goes. But we're going to check all that out for y'all.
All right. Y'all have a great one.
Thank you.
We love you.
Bye-bye.